First, we're going to introduce ourselves. I'm Shoshana Dotson, and I work with Titles 1 and 5.
I'm Erin Suddeth, and I'm the branch manager for the Title I Part A Support and Improvement branch, and Title V is within that branch.
If you have questions, please drop them in the Teams chat, and we will answer those as they come up throughout the webinar. This cadre will consist of webinars that happen about every 2 to 3 months, and you'll be notified in advance so you have time to set aside on your calendar. If you're unable to attend, we do always post these webinars and the accompanying PowerPoints on the Title V portion of our KDE website. Each session is going to last about an hour, and it's open. The cadre is open to any district that receives RLIS or SRSA funds. At the end of each webinar, you'll be asked to complete a survey that will allow us to know how to best proceed with future webinars. The link to the survey was in the email I sent out this morning. Here's an overview of our webinar for today. First, we're going to look at our survey results from that initial interest survey that I sent out last summer. Next, we will cover some Title V application reminders and important tasks that are recommended for coordinators at the beginning of each school year. We're also going to have a coordinator share out time, and then we will check Teams for any final questions. I also will highlight some helpful resources for you, and you'll see links all throughout the presentation that will lead to additional resources. Don't forget that the webinar and PowerPoint will be posted shortly after our conclusion on that Title V portion of our website. After looking over the results of the initial survey that I sent out, I noticed some trends for this season. Of the 36 responses, most of the survey participants are not new to Title V, coordinate multiple title programs, and plan to support their Title I program with Title V funds. When it comes to topics, most expressed interest in allowable expenditures for Title V funds, creating and maintaining proper documentation for the Title V program, and best practices for implementing a Title V program. Regarding FY26 Title V applications, those were due on August 31st. Of the 86 RLIS eligible districts, 75 have submitted and received their initial approval, and the remaining 11 are currently being edited by districts to gain that initial approval. As always, applications are reviewed in the order in which they are submitted, and our goal is to approve those applications in a timely fashion. By considering these reminders, you will help ensure that your application can be approved by KDE. The first consideration is current data. Title V funds should be used to address current needs in your district and/or your schools. When referencing data points in any of your application narratives, be sure they reflect the most up-to-date numbers. If outdated data is referenced in the application, it will have to be returned to the district for revision. Alignment is also an important consideration. All 3 pages of the application should align and support each other. For example, if the narratives on the program details page indicate that funds will be used to provide staff, we should also see the headcount and full-time equivalency for those staff documented on the personnel details page and staff-related expenses such as salaries and fringe benefits on the budget page. While considering requests to fund non-consumable items, the purchase of items like Chromebooks is an allowable use of funds. However, we need to make sure there's justification for the purchase. Title V funds should not be used to simply replace all of your existing technology. If you make the same request for Chromebooks or another non-consumable item several years in a row, it is necessary to include an explanation of how this request represents an additional need for besides what the district has already been approved for in previous years. With EL expenditures, any items purchased for EL students must be supplemental to the district's core EL program, which is required under civil rights. The core program is outlined in the district's LOUD plan, and all activities and supports in the plan must be supported with general funds. Specifying that a purchase for EL students is supplemental in the program details or budget narratives can be helpful in this process. Regarding virtual students, they are not included in the attendance data used to generate Title V funds, which means they aren't eligible to receive services supported by Title V funds. We confirmed this with USAID near the end of the previous school year. For districts requesting funds for SROs, any funds used to support SROs must be supplemental to the funding provided by the state. Be sure to verify that the funds are supplemental and provide sufficient details supporting the need in your narratives. These supplemental funds are allowable for salaries only. Regarding new teacher mentorship, all requests must be approved to ensure that state requirements are being met before Title V funds can be used for these types of programs. I do work closely with our Title II team here at KDE to help me with that. So, important tasks for the beginning of each school year. When I was looking over the survey results, as we just went over, I did see that there was a request for covering, well, I'm going to cover the important tasks. And what that's going to do is that's going to help cover the best practices interest and also documentation, important documentation that you want to keep. I'm going to list these and then I'll go through them in detail in the next several slides. First, you want to set up a system to collect Title V documentation. Things like time and effort, allowability procedures, and safeguarding of assets. It is also important to schedule quarterly meetings with the finance officer to analyze the alignment of the EERP and GMAP budgets. You also want to update open house, which is done through Person Role Manager. And it's also recommended that you bookmark the Title V part of the KDE website, as well as the pages that are that represent the programs that Title V can support. I have links to all those at the bottom of this page. So I have links to Title I Part A, Title II Part A, Title III, and Title IV Part A there for you. When it comes to documentation retention requirements, KDE requires that records for programs tied to ESSA be retained for 3 years. KDE recommends retaining 5 years of documentation. This is because in the event of an audit, up to 5 years of records could be requested for review. If the district is in the middle of litigation, those records must be kept until that litigation is resolved. In order to collect the proper documentation, your best resources as a Title V coordinator would be our RLIS monitoring checklist linked to this slide. This checklist is newly updated for FY26, so please use it to help you collect appropriate evidence in the event that your district is chosen for monitoring in the future. When it comes to time and effort documentation, that's going to be one of the things that is going to be very important to set up at the very beginning of the year, especially if you have staff that is paid with Title V funds. These records should reflect an after-the-fact distribution of the actual activity of those staff members. Besides the actual recording of time and effort, the district should also develop written time and effort procedures that outline how accurate documentation will be met. These are not a policy, but a set of written procedures specific to the district that outline the step-by-step process that is to be used. Even if you have no staff paid with Title V, it's recommended that you develop these written procedures and keep them on file in the event that staff are paid with Title V in the future. The two types of time and effort documentation that I'm going to discuss today are personnel activity reports, or PARs, and semi-annual certifications. PARs, which are personal activity reports, should be used when you have an employee being paid with Title V that is working on more than one cost objective. For example, a teacher works part-time as an EL interventionist for EL students as part of the district's core EL program and is paid with general funds and works part-time in a third grade classroom as supplementary classroom reduction, paid out of Title V. Because the EL intervention is part of the district's core EL program, it cannot be supported with federal funds such as Title V. The work providing supplementary classroom reduction is an allowable use of Title V, making this an example of multiple cost objectives. So basically, this teacher is performing two different duties, so it counts as two cost objectives. The key, though, is not how many funding sources are used, but how many different duties are performed. As far as PARs go, there are some important considerations to think about. They should provide an after-the-fact distribution of the actual portion of time and effort dedicated to Title V and all other sources. And they should also be reviewed monthly to verify the amount of time spent on each cost objective and not manipulated to reflect a desired percentage. These FTEs should be documented after the fact. This means that the staff member and the Title V coordinator should work together to determine the actual amount of time spent on each duty and the FTE that this represents. Let's think of this in a real-world situation. The staff member's salary may be listed as a 0.6 FTE from general funds and a 0.4 from Title V. When that staff person documents their time, it may be that in October they actually spent 0.48 and in November 0.62 performing general funds duties. It would not be realistic for the PAR to just state 0.06 for every month. The district should accurately document the actual percentage worked from all funding sources each month. Over the course of the year, if it does not average out to 0.6, then an adjustment may be needed to the FTE coming from the general fund and the FTE coming from Title V to reflect a more accurate picture. This would result in a Title V application revision to reflect that appropriate FTE as well. Due to the limitations of the slide, I have created an abbreviated example of the PAR recommended by KDE. It should be customized by adding your district's letterhead and have enough boxes in the table to record each month that the staff member is working on each cost objective. If the person is working on more than two cost objectives, additional columns should be added for that as well. If a district chooses to use a semi-annual certification, it should be used for each staff member paid from Title V that is working on a single cost objective. This means one activity or duty regardless of the number of funding sources utilized to pay the total salary earned. If the district chooses to document time and effort more frequently for employees working on a single cost objective, forms may be completed as often as district procedures require. So for our semi-annual certification example, we have a supplemental math teacher. They are working in a school serving low achieving students with 50% Title V funds and 50% general funds. Teaching math to low achieving students is a single cost objective because it can be fully supported under Title V Part B. This is an example of the KDE recommended semi-annual certification form. It should be customized by adding district letterhead at the top. Because it is semi-annual, it should be completed twice a year. Most districts choose the period from July 1st to December 31st for the first form, and then the period from January 1st to June 30th for the second form. The second set of documentation a coordinator should set up is allowability procedures. There is a requirement that each district have a set of written allowability procedures, and this is different from a policy. These procedures should include the specific process used by your district to ensure that all federal funds purchases are allowable. At a minimum, the procedures should include RAND, which stands for reasonable, allocable, necessary, and documented. Written procedures should contain the guiding questions that go with each part of RAND. This way, any staff member can evaluate whether a purchase may be allowable or not. Answering yes to all the questions implies that a cost may be allowable. The R part of RAND is reasonable. This means not excessive in cost and based on prudent and sound purchasing practices. And your questions are, does the cost seem reasonable in comparison to fair market prices for comparable goods or services? Does the expenditure help to target the purpose of the grant? Did the district follow its purchasing or procurement procedures? What examples could be provided to any auditor to document the cost as reasonable? If your district follows procurement procedures, it will help ensure that you are paying a reasonable cost. All of the required procurement topics are outlined in this Uniform Grant Guidance link I have provided. The A in RAND is allocable. Allocable means a cost is incurred specifically for the benefit of the program, distributed proportionately, an allowable activity, and meets the program's intent. So you would want to put questions on your allowability procedures like, is the cost incurred specifically for the title program? Does the cost meet the intent of the title program? If costs are shared with another program, is that program's portion incurred proportionately? Is the purchase supported by the federal funding matrix and or allowable EERP codes in GMAP? And then I have linked here for you KDE's federal grants webpage. The N stands for necessary. Necessary means essential for carrying out the needs-based Title V Part B Subpart 2 program. Your questions you'd want to consider are, could the cost be deemed necessary for the operation of a quality, efficient title program as outlined in the district's application? Is the need for the cost supported in the needs assessment, CDIP, CSIP, or a statement in the GMAP application? And finally, we have D for documented. Purchases must be adequately documented. So you want to ask questions like, could the district readily document the reasonableness, allocability, and necessity of the cost? Is documentation maintained for the number of years required per the records retention schedule? Does the district have records related to the purchase? Rationale such as why a specific vendor was chosen, price quotes, purchase orders, etc. Excuse me. A third set of documentation a coordinator should set up each year involves the safeguarding of Title V assets. Anything classified as equipment must be inventoried. According to the Code of Federal Regulation and KDE guidelines, equipment is tangible personal property, including information technology systems, that has a useful life of more than 1 year and a per unit acquisition cost which equals or exceeds the lesser of the capitalization level established by the non-federal entity for financial statement purposes, or $10,000. KDE's Capital Asset Guide, linked on this slide, recommends a $5,000 capitalization threshold for school districts for items such as equipment, computers, and vehicles. The guide also recommends districts work with their auditors and local school boards to develop their own capitalization policies. The district may not adopt a threshold higher than the $10,000 for items like equipment, computers, and vehicles when purchased with Title V funds, since this is the federal capitalization threshold. Even if a district does not purchase assets required to be classified as equipment, it is best practice to create a set of written procedures for how inventory will be documented if these types of purchases are made in the future. These procedures would include the step-by-step process once purchases are made and received by the district. Once the set of procedures is created, an inventory should also be maintained based upon those procedures. A simple Excel spreadsheet may be used, or your district may choose to use inventory software. A physical inventory is required every 2 years, and a hard copy should remain current in the event of an audit or monitoring. For your reference, this is a suggested list of details to include in your district's inventorying system for equipment. If you have items purchased with Title V funds that are not considered equipment due to price per unit, like Chromebooks, an inventory record is still important and should include at least an item description, location of the item, item condition, and date the inventory was taken. Districts should maintain not only a policy, but also written procedures outlining how it will handle items with federal funds that are lost, damaged, or stolen. Important components would include responsibility and accountability. You want to identify who is responsible for federal property and what is expected of all users. Immediate reporting. It's important to outline clear steps for employees to follow when an incident occurs. It must include who incidents should be reported to, when to notify law enforcement, and how to document the incident and other related items. Investigation. This section should detail the process for investigating an incident. Disposition. This section should have district procedures based upon the district's policy. As a pass-through entity, KDE must also be notified of any loss, damage, or theft that will impact the federal program. Finally, an important section would be update records, how that should be handled. You want to make sure that inventory records are updated for the items and documentation is maintained based upon your record retention policies. So, Moving out of some of the actual documents, and this is actually part of documentation as well, because you would want to document these meetings. It is important to schedule meetings with your district's FO, finance officer. These meetings will serve several purposes. They will ensure that the approved budget in the GMAP application and the budget of the ERP align, which confirms that the finance officer is aware of the approved budget codes for the year. These will also ensure that the Title V coordinator is aware of when the GMAP budget no longer aligns with the ERP budget and that a revision is needed to the GMAP application. This also allows both the Title V coordinator and the finance officer to ensure that all purchases are allowable and meet program requirements. And they ensure that the actual expenditures on the ERP align with the approved GMAP budget. This will avoid overspending for object codes and will also allow the Title V coordinator to see what object codes are not being used in the ERP. If either of those things are occurring, the GMAP budget can be reallocated to match the actual needs of the district once the application revision has been approved. Next, updating open house through Person Role Manager. If you have not, please check KDE's open house page for your district to verify that you are listed as the Title V coordinator and as any other roles you perform. It's very important for this information to be up to date before the beginning of each school year so that you do not miss important information sent out by KDE regarding your program. Here are some instructions on how to edit open house through Person Role Manager. If you find that you aren't listed next to all the roles that you fulfill, contact your WAPOC to make those updates. This slide is provided for your reference, and it'll explain the steps that will be needed to update open house. Most WAPOCs are already familiar with this process and may just need to be notified that a change needs to be made. Okay, are there any questions so far in the chat, Erin? Have you seen any come up?
Nothing yet.
Okay. Okay, so now, well, not long ago, I incorporated a part of our time together where Title V coordinators from districts around the state can share the ways they're using Title V funds effectively to help students. Today, I have a Title V coordinator from Lincoln County that has volunteered to speak to you. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
I just want to make sure my mic is working. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
I had some technical difficulties this morning, so just wanted to make sure. So I moved into this role and I cover all the title programs in our district in September of the 23-24 school year. So last year was my first full school year in this role, and I was selected for monitoring. So I was a bit nervous at the beginning of the year, but I learned a lot through the process. It's not as scary as everyone tells you. And basically, you know, if you are following what the handbooks tell you to do, you're checking in with your auditor, you're checking your GMAP and keeping up with things. They just want to make sure when they do an audit that, you know, you are looking at your data when you make decisions on how to use your funds to support your district, that it is an allowable expense, and that throughout the year you're monitoring and keeping up with things and making sure they're being followed appropriately and that adjustments are made when needed, and that everything you do matches what you say you're doing in GMAP. And that, I mean, as long as you have good systems and processes in place, that will happen. So one of the things that Shoshana was, you know, impressed with and wanted me to share out today was our financial officer and myself meet very frequently, just to make sure we're both on the same page. I learn things from her, she learns things from me, and that we're just, you know, we are monitoring things in an efficient way and then also communicating that out with our administrators. And so one of the things that our finance officer does that is so helpful that I would have loved to have had when I was a building level principal is a monthly financial dashboard. And if I can share my screen, let me see here. Sorry, give me just a second.
Do you know the process for sharing? I just unshared
Yes.
the. Okay, okay, go ahead.
Hold on, let me see if I've got what I need here. Hold on. Sorry about this. And let me see if I can get this over here. Not picking up the screen that I want it to show, and I apologize. It is definitely the user, not the program.
It did come over the spreadsheet.
Do you guys see
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is an example of what she would share out monthly. And so basically, it's got all the different accounts, and what's left, what was the beginning balance in the year, and then what they've spent and how much remains. If there's any important deadlines that we need to meet, if something needs to be spent out by a certain date, then it says it on here. Like, you can look at field trip money. This balance must be spent by 6/30/26. It's got title money in there. This is a term we came up with. If you look on the far right, it says PD&R. So that for us is professional development not required. So anything that we're spending money on beyond the required 24 hours in professional development area, and that could be for conferences, it could be for initiatives that we've written in our GMAP application that we want to meet. You don't see Title V on here because we really cover that in the spring when we're talking about how we're going to utilize our funds, and we utilize our Title V funds to support a teaching position, a portion of a teaching position in each of our schools. So they know what that is spent on, and that's in a different dashboard that when we come up with how we're going to utilize our funds and how I'm going to input that into GMAP and apply for approval for what our plan is for the upcoming year. But this has been really helpful. And like I said, I would have loved to have had this as a building level principal. It's great communication for principals with myself and with our finance officer. If they know that there's an area that has a lot of extra money, or they didn't realize that it needed to be spent by a certain date, it just sparks good conversations. And we reference this when we are doing our monthly principal meetings. If there's something that's standing out, then we tell them. If there's a new grant that their school has received, then we add it to the dashboard. You can imagine how full the high school dashboard looks. There are a lot more boxes in the high school and middle school, but especially in the high school, we even include the Perkins and everything else that's included in high school. So any funds that they're spending along the way, we include in the dashboard. So it's been really helpful to our district. And that's really all I have. Any questions for me?
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question.
I was just going to say, I think that's great.
It's wonderful.
And I'll be happy to share that with Shoshana, and you're more than welcome to share this out, if anybody's interested in just kind of utilizing our template or anything that I can do to help.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, so if anyone would like, you can contact me and I can send you that template and you can customize it for your district. Thank you so much, Diana.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yep, and you just got your first request for the template in the chat.
There we go. Okay, so If you would be interested in participating and sharing out, I know there's so many of you out there that are doing some really great things because I read your applications. So please reach out to me and let me know. I do believe I included a question on the survey as well, that allows you to volunteer for this purpose. So please either reach out directly by email or fill out that part of the survey and let me know that you'd also be interested in sharing. Okay, last chance for any questions. Anyone have any questions? I realize this has been a lot of information, been kind of heavy. So, yeah, if you think of any later, please feel free to email me and I will get any answers back to you that you need. Okay, so now for our helpful resource spotlight. I do always spotlight our ESEA Now newsletter that we provide to all districts free of charge. We are providing it again for this school year. You will receive emails twice a week with helpful information about all the title programs, which, especially as a Title V consultant, I find so helpful because you do find out information about all the other programs Title V can support. So it's a great resource for you as a Title V coordinator. If you would like to receive those and you are not, please reach out to your Title I coordinator to get on that list. And then I have included some helpful article links there. Now, you do have to have the subscription. If you click on the links, it is going to ask you to log in. So if you don't have the subscription, you will not be able to open these and access them. But some very timely ones I found, can Title II pay for performance-based bonuses for teachers? Lots of districts looking for teacher retention ideas. Head back to school with ESEA Now's top sample forms, tools of summer. So lots of great forms there, templates. There's a Smart Start about English learners, state and district obligations. So things that you should be meeting for English learners or have in place in case your district does have some English learners come in. Programs manager eases back to school burden by pacing staff onboarding. Especially if you're the person that's kind of the federal programs person and you're doing PD for federal programs for other staff members, that's a great article that kind of talks about how one district kind of paces things out so it's not so overwhelming for the people that they work with. As always, I try to end with a slide that has our links that I've provided throughout all on one page, because I know I've always enjoyed that when someone has done that. You don't have to go back through the PowerPoint and find whatever slide it was on. So I've got the links to our Title V portion of our KDE website, the other programs that Title V supports, that checklist for so that you can set up your documentation, the federal grants webpage, the capital asset guide and EERP, and then a link to open house there. So you can click it and see if your roles are up to date on open house. And at the bottom, I've got watch for an email with a link to the newly created Title V RLIS handbook for coordinators. I did work very diligently over the summer in coordination with Aaron to create a Title V coordinator handbook. And so that is in the approval process currently. As soon as it gets approved, I'm going to send it out to everyone so that you have it for your reference, and it will also be posted on the Title V part of our website. Okay, and here is my contact info just in case you need it. Please do reach out with any questions, or if you would like to participate in a coordinator's corner part of our presentation. I just saw that Aaron has linked the survey in the chat. They're easily for you to click on. So please do fill out that survey. It is optional, but again, it really gives me a lot of good feedback. I read those responses and I use those to kind of help tailor the next set of cadres as we go. I try to improve every time as we go. So please do fill those out. I really do care about your responses. Thank you all. And we really do appreciate you coming today. Thank you so much. Please feel free to contact me at any time. And don't forget that shortly after we conclude today, that this presentation and the PowerPoint will be posted on our KDE Title V website. Thanks and have a great day.